Being 30 in Australia at the moment sucks. It's shit in every facet. And I am sick to death of older generations telling Gen X, millennials, Alpha, telling everyone else, oh, stop complaining. It's not that hard. The interest rates were 17% back in my day. Back in your day, milk was also 30 cents a litre. A car costs you $3,000. A brand new car off the lot costs you $3,000. And in comparison to the wage you were paying, it's about 35% cheaper to buy a car. Back in my day. Yeah, so you can take back in my day and you can shove it up your asshole. Very passionate about this, and I'm very fired up because I watched a clip from a show called The Gruen Transfer, and I believe it's Russell Harcroft, basically saying it's the hardest it's ever been for 30-year-olds. I want to play you this clip.
It's the hardest it's ever been for a 30-year-old in Australia, in Australia's history. It is true 30-year-olds are going to be less well off than their parents are. That's a fact. It's a fact that when I was 30, the house cost me 3 times my salary. Now, 8 times plus for a 30-year-old is what it's going to cost you to get into the housing market. It's true that HECS has doubled in the last 15 years, right? Doubled from a $15,000 bill to a $30,000 bill. It's true that a baby boomer paid half the tax that a 30-year-old pays now when they were 30 years of age. So the reality is it is extremely difficult to be a 30-year-old in Australia right now.
And he's absolutely correct in every facet, in education, in wages, in house prices, in taxes. Everything is more expensive than it was in, say, 1980 in Australia. Now, I did a bit of digging and a bit of research. In 1980, a really beautiful house cost you about $80,000. Now, we're talking in Vaucluse, which was about 6 times your salary. Now, if you want to buy in Vaucluse now, oh my God. You're looking at $4 to $5 million, which, and the average salary sits at about 70 grand. What's the math on that? It's a little bit more than 6 times. 6 times your salary, what would that get you? So if we get, so 6, what are we looking? 7 sixes. What the fuck are they? Clearly education's been doing really So 6 times the salary of 70 grand is $420,000. What the fuck is that going to get you these days? I've gone in and I've had a look at sort of all facets of life. Milk was 30 cents a litre back in 1980. If you adjust that for inflation, it should be $1.50 in today's day and age for a litre of milk. It's not. It sits at around $1.90, which doesn't sound like a lot of difference. But what I'm trying to say here is that in no area are 30-year-olds better off than back in 1980. Life is so much harder. And when the old fuddy-duddies tell us, oh, God, life in my time, it was just so much easier. The interest rate was 17%. Oh, it wasn't the 6% that it is now. Yeah, well, you can take your interest rate and you can fucking shove it up your flappy, gross asshole that's probably loose, you old I'm just really annoyed at a generation who got free education, had lower taxes, and who own like 4 properties are telling us, oh, all you have to do is just work harder. Okay, you just got to work more and you'll get paid more. Let's get into that, shall we? I want to show you a graph. The graph you're looking at is labour productivity. So the introduction of the internet, the introduction of all these cool new technologies and ways to make workplaces more productive. In the 70s, what that meant was when you were more productive, you had better trade unions, there was better infrastructure and resource in Australia. And so what would happen is as productivity increased, so did wages. You'd see the wage increase with the productivity. We then hit a point where productivity escalates quite rapidly and wage growth pretty much stagnates with it. And so when the excuse is used to work better, work harder, for what purpose? Because that doesn't earn us any more money. Our wages have not increased with the productivity of corporations and businesses. What does that mean? And why is that? Well, basically, it's because the government is fucked in the asshole. You know, you're talking back in the 70s, trade unions really had a lot of bargaining power. Your people would get together and they would demand certain things. Now, with globalization, you see a lot of development developments happen offshore, exploitation of workers in China, in India, for example, which drives costs down, which increase productivity, and we see a lot of things leaving Australia and being produced elsewhere. You also have things like just general fucking greed from people like Gina Reinhardt, who pay next to no tax. And sure, Gina will tell us, oh, I pay billions of dollars in tax. I paid $42 billion in tax in the last financial year. She sips on her fucking French champagne. Well, has Gina told you she takes a salary of almost $5 billion a year? Has she also told you that her companies earn $140 billion? And she's at one of the lowest mining tax rates in the world. In Norway, they tax any minerals or anything dug out of the ground has an almost 80% tax on it. And so what does that do? Well, it goes back to the people of Norway and it pays for their schools, roads, hospitals, nurses, teachers, right? Gina pays 30% and still has the fucking nerve to complain. Oh, but my $40 billion pretty much pays for all the teachers, nurses and police forces in Australia. News alert, it doesn't. That costs $60 billion and you're paying $40 billion. Also, you're taking all the resources out of Australia and keeping the majority of the profit and earning $5 billion to go into your pocket. Now, granted, I'm assuming Gina would be paying about $2.5 billion in tax on that salary, which means she's only earning a measly $2.5 billion take home in her pocket, which equates to about $600,000 a day. Oh God, she earns only $600,000 a day. What the fuck? Who needs that type of money? Oh, and other things that didn't exist in the 1980s were corporations paying no tax whatsoever. I mean, look at Apple. Apple earned a total of $391 billion globally last year. What the fuck? In Australia, I think it earned about $4 or $5 billion, and then it paid about $100 million in tax, which is on par about 1%. Corporations should be paying 30%. Apple somehow only paid 1% tax. So who has to make up that deficit? We do. We do, right? The 30-year-olds. Basically the rest of Australia. Not just the 30-year-olds, everyone. Except for the retirees. Okay, they don't pay tax because they've already earned all their money. They've put their money into super and now they're retiring, living the high life, complaining about the fact that we complain that life's too hard. Retirees can sit the fuck down. They do not have an argument in this fight. We end up having to foot the bill, right? Whether it's in terrible wages for those in the public sector, shitty hospitals, shitty schools, shitty roads, everything's privatised these days. And I shouldn't say that because as Australia, we're very lucky. We have great schools. We have a great education system. We have an incredible Medicare and hospital system. We are very lucky. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have its flaws, and it's not an excuse to be like, stop whinging, you've got it so easy. All we're saying is, why is it harder and why does it cost more to be 30 now than it did 50 years ago? The comments under Russell's passionate video, really interesting to read. I particularly like this one that says, just wait till Dutton gets a hold of us. I mean, Peter Dutton wants to open up superannuation for people so that they can afford a house. I mean, that's not the solution, though. Taking money out of your super, right, to the everyday Australian who may not understand the impact that that will have on your future, right? Like, I was like, oh yeah, you could take money out of your super. I don't see the problem with that. And then when I looked into how much money your super can make you when invested wisely is fucking insane to me. Taking out $50,000, $100,000 from your super can equate to, oh my God, like hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue by the time you retire. Like the compounded interest in super is insane. It's crazy. Super is so important. And for Peter Dutton to then go, oh, all of those plebs that are struggling, here's an idea. Rather than me increase the corporate tax rate to try and fix the wages in this country, you can just take the money out of your super. Okay? And that is going to be a problem for us in about 30 to 40 years when you retire, but I will be dead by then. Voldemort out! You know, like the solutions that are being offered are not even band-aid solutions. And it sort of comes from both sides of the government. I just don't understand, like, why Why are we here? Another comment says, boomers are just stuck in the past mentally, which is fine. It happens to everyone. I was chatting with my mum, who understands, but who will routinely say, I knew people who had no furniture when they moved into their house. And I will have to try and explain that the choice these days isn't nice things versus owning a home, because the latter isn't an option. There is no option to own a home. Honestly, it's all avocado toast. The idea that, if you just cut back, you could buy somewhere is woefully outdated. But it's not malicious. It's how it was for them. And that's the thing in all the research I've done. I mean, in your formative years, in your adulthood, that's how you lived, and that's how you just assume life is for people. You know, like I go back to my high school days and I just assume that's exactly what it's like for the kids these days. And it could not be further from the truth. We don't understand what high school is like anymore. Our version of high school does not exist anymore. I had a Nokia 5510 and it could play Snake and make calls, and it would take me 25 minutes to type out a text message. These days, there's phones with cameras, everyone's being recorded, you've got access to the internet, you're not even safe at home from bullying, right? It's just a totally different landscape, and one I will never personally understand. And it's the same generationally. Boomers don't understand Gen X don't understand millennial don't understand Gen Z, and then so on and so forth, right? But we complain about them. We complain about them, the ones above us, and we complain about the ones below us. But we really just need to understand that it should theoretically be the same, if not easier, for the next generation. We should be paving the way. Anyways, I mean, I did so much research. I crunched all these numbers and I tried to find like what was the solution. You know, I looked at the price of buying a car in 1980 was $3,000. The average salary was $13,000 in 1980. Flash forward 45 years, the average salary is $67 and a car costs you 35 grand. What does that mean? Well, $3,000 was 25% of your salary. $35,000 is almost 50% of your salary, you know? So the cost of cars has gone up incredibly. Petrol and milk have both increased. Wages have not gone up. Like you know what? Everything has gone up. Like generally, it's gone up. It's not just like, adjusting for inflation, it hasn't gone up. No, adjusting for inflation, everything costs more than it did back in 1980. And so where is the respite? Where is the relief coming from for people who are in their 30s? There isn't any. And I don't particularly see a future where there is any sort of relief. I spoke to my parents. Oh, God, get this. Oh, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt. Now, my mum and dad had good jobs. My mum was a fashion designer in the 70s and 80s, and my dad worked for Qantas. And they were both paid relatively higher than the average human being. And I don't know, I don't want to call them losers, but they weren't frivolously spending like their children do. They bought a property in Bondi Junction, so just next to Bondi. Did some Googling. That property sold last year. It's a 3-bedroom townhouse, and it sold for $2.75 million. $2.75 million. How much did my father pay for it in 1978? He paid $30,000. Now, my dad at that time would have been on probably close to maybe 20 grand a year. Granted, he renovated that and he put he added the 3rd bedroom. But that is insane to me. Who can afford that? Who can afford $2.7 million? That townhouse is slightly bigger than my apartment. I'll end it with this comment. It says, as a woman in her mid-30s with a PhD, but no job, no property, and no prospects, I do appreciate it when the systemic issues facing my generation are at least acknowledged as real. Someone's written underneath it. Have you tried finding a wealthy husband? Fucking hell. Oh my God, what even is life? Oh, it's so bleak. What's the solution? Like, to me, it's just obviously we need to start taxing businesses or corporations. Corporations, let's be real, it's not businesses. It's fucking corporations that find loopholes. They use our roads. Their employees go to our schools. They use our public transport, but they don't contribute fucking anything to that infrastructure. And they'll just happily take our money and then send it offshore to where is Apple based? In Ireland, where they pay no tax whatsoever.